Books are on sale outside. They are going fast, so if you want one, I would head out there like uno momento. I'm going to give the intro just based on the poster. I hope that's okay.
Yes.
Are we good? Okay. Oh, and I think you want to do a book signing, right?
Sure.
We're good? Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, Camonghne has decided to let us do a book signing.
A little Q&A.
Yeah. So that'll be after the reading, following a Q&A with the author. Okay? So thanks for being here, for real. Yeah. Camonghne Felix, poet and essayist, is the author of Dyscalculia. So much better. Dyscalculia, a love story of epic miscalculation from one world in 2023. It was hailed by Time magazine and Vogue as one of the most anticipated books of 2023 and top memoirs of 2023. Her poetry debut, Build Yourself a Boat, from Haymarket Books in 2019, was longlisted for the 2019 National Book Award in Poetry, shortlisted for the PEN/Open Book Awards, and shortlisted for the Lambda Literary Awards. Her poetry has appeared, or is forthcoming, in the Academy of American Poets, Harvard Review, Lit Hub, The New Yorker, PEN America, Poetry Magazine, Freeman's Journal, and many, many other places. Her next full-length work, Let the Poets Govern, is forthcoming, also from One World, which is an imprint of Penguin Random House. I've had a lot of fun hanging out with you. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. This is where you go, hi.
Hello.
Hello. I'm going to try to bring some energy into the room. So if you hear something that you like, a line, anything, you can, I don't know, if you want to snap, I don't love snaps, but like something along the line of a snap is fine.
How about an oh yeah?
An oh yeah. Or even like a hmms are good. I like the hmms. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I am going to read a couple poems from the debut, Build Yourself a Boat, and then I'm going to read a little bit of the memoir, and then I'm going to read a little bit of some new poems. We'll have a Q&A, and we'll go from there. Cool? Cool. I'm not even going to promise anything. I'm just going to read. Lost Poem 4, RX. The psych on duty in triage asks me if I want to die, and I say, not at the moment, no, but stay tuned. I can charm my way out of anything, including his 7-day suggested stay, those ugly gray mornings buzzing in infrasound. I can save my own life just as easily as I can corrupt compounds of right silence with just a mouth. Drown it out of its own sound. This is what makes me dangerously compatible with death, me and my ability to finesse choice out of desire, the talented 10th of disassociation, the power of being just a body within a body of jewels. So, when I was growing up, because I realized that there is a more intergenerational conversation happening, there was a thing that was brand new to the world called the internet. And then Google came along, and that was brand new to everyone's world. And I was like a little freaked out in the sense that there was just so much information at my fingertips that I didn't know what to do. So these poems, there are some poems I have called Google search poems where I'm putting in keywords that represent things that I was thinking about or feeling when I was at that age. Google search keywords. Having strange dreams. Owls, crippled, bleeding. What is dreaming? Do owls dream? What is drowning? What non-human forges marks? Who is Eve? Where's Eve's child? In what garden? In what fold? Nativity in question. Species on earth. Species in question. What else gives birth? What else calls war? What else builds nests? What else summons fire to feed? On entropy, after Yasemin Ghiazi. There are more people alive now than there are dead in the earth, an article says. I keep telling myself to invest in entropy, or at least in defining it, in contending with it. Decomposition is a performance of exponential dignity, an act of stripping what life-worn fabrics perforate the borders between lyric and magic. I want to step out of my language and light up, but the body is a container. The body is a mold. I fit snug. I can barely breathe in here. Leave me. I've got to count the dead in here. I'm an atom, and I'm new to the water. I got born by expanding. I get born every day. My flesh is so damn raw with all this entering. Sleeping on Adderall. Here's a board and a bold move and a siphon of power, and I'm not sleeping, but I am overwhelmed with my own stiff bones, with the rigidity of being strong, always handling, always beyond my years, dying faster than everyone else. Here's a reason to wear some white, kind of dance with it, be the yoke of all things and float. And here's strong again, the irrevocable contract. Here's what comes with all the cold yellow, scaffolding my mornings. Here's the rain, and I can either dance in it or walk like everyone else. It's the thread veined right through me, perspective only a shared tool. It's fine. I've got to stop writing love poems anyway. It's not conducive to the project. Stick to the project. There are oceans, and I am just one querulous, petulant fish, glittering and considering the upstream. Okay. So I don't know if you all remember this, Trayvon Martin was killed by George Zimmerman, murdered, and there was a trial, and I was in grad school at this point and felt really lonely and confused. So I have some poems in here of me watching, or about me watching the trial, which I watched every day for about 10 days. Zimmerman testimonies, day 1. These assholes, they always get away. George Zimmerman. And then the sky is bleeding, a soft cry, and I am at the head of it. A 6-pane window, a vein of lightning, a bath in imminence, and what kind of Arizona? Which pack of Skittles? I like the dark side pack, but those came out last winter. Trey's body already a dovetail in moist ground, and which newscast had his father come home to arrange the dry bones in front of, and how long had he waited for his one boy to return from wherever night-crusted boys roam in the salt of Floridian South, and who plans to rob anything in socks and sandals? And in the courtroom, the prosecutor taps play on the tape. Trayvon's wet scream, the only thing living a full life, and his mother, a mare overwrought with the front seat of her son's slaughter, chases the breath out of the courtroom, the big door whipping behind her, running and running. Every day of this trial, he dies. Okay, I'll read a couple more from this collection. Okay, so I used to work in politics. I worked in politics for about 10 years. So I worked on political campaigns, presidential campaigns. And I was about to work for the Hillary Clinton campaign in, I guess that's 2018, 2016. And there were so many different things that were happening around the way we talked about abortion, around the way we talked about women's labor, Black women's labor. So this poem is about that, and I recognize that this timing is a bit painful. This is the title. After the abortion, an older white Planned Parenthood volunteer asks if my husband is here and squeezes my thigh and says, "You made the right decision, and then look what could happen if Trump were president. I mean, you might not even be here." What else could I say except I agree with you? Really am bulldozed with grief, my strength a whistle in this cold parabola, everything an arch nemesis, all of myself a bull. Instead I said yes, he is here, I mean my fiance. I know I made the right decision, of course he is okay. We already agreed on this plan. I mean, look what could happen. She says, Hillary is our only option. I say, I know. Look, I haven't told anyone this. I am quitting my job. She says, I think I understand your geography. No, not really. I mean, I'm leaving my good God government job. I work for the governor. She says, are you running? I say, sort of. I mean, I'm going to work for Hillary, for America, because we're looking at a critical fault. Otherwise, they need my colloquial criticalities, my totalizing abnormalities, my compounds and constructs of trajectory. This is the only how I know to be had. I belong to the people, but not your people. I mean, I'm saying my people. You wouldn't understand this. I'm stealthy and svelte. I can counterswell any tide. I am prepared. She holds my hands, says, thank you. You must know that it matters. All of it matters. In the bed next to me, a woman solid with anguish and sleep is ruby with the wash of bleeding out, and no one is tending. I look down at myself, curried with the same deep pink, realize no one is tending. In the taxi cab, my husband, I mean fiance, holds my hands with his fingers all lead, a dying creak at the pitch of a sword. He says, I'm okay when you're okay. You have to be okay. Remember, they're waiting on you. For days I slept like this, my open submission to the cosmic opacities of time, my body shutting its just-built mouth. He lies awake, meters between us, steady documenting a decay. My Black Studies professor said, what are you here for if you're not willing to die for it? I get it. I'm skunked with the fear of what I'm willing to kill for it. Where do I foul this nuance? To whom do I spare this complaint? When I woke, he'd been fed, watered, wanted for, realized he didn't need my indecision or his inability to travel time or the bottomless glamour of conquering the unknown. I know now the octane faults of our ontological duties, the war between becoming and the formal unbecoming of being called, and they said they needed me, they did, so I went. We bellied the hole. I did what my mother asked of me, stepped into the heavy quilt of her ill-drawn life. I did my fucking job. I did what I was told. In the end, all my chemistry a performance of gratitude. All my insides turned purple with storms. On election night, I flipped from channel to channel, neuroses in practice, as weighted predictions balanced the draw. I think no. Oh please, don't you know what I've bled for this in the distance? A lone voice is soprano with cheer, and the silence settles in, succeeds with bare platitudes. I swear, my love, I did my best. I worked with what I know. I tilled, I paved, I foraged, labored a land, got us some growth, settled my currents, left all of us famished, bloody, hungry, at war. Yes, it is possible. For most of my life, I remained unaware of this, the way a wingless arm is unaware of the conceit of flight, but now I know that yes, it is possible to be allergic to a person. It is possible for the body to be wholly autonomous in how it chooses to preserve itself, no matter what fleshy, amorphous image of the heart the synapse might conjure, a great fire muted by holy water, a blue room with one pink knob. No matter what you think you want, it's the body that decides and will reject whatever antibodies revile its stasis. And in this case, the foreign cell was the Pisces fish, a twin fish, a two-fish flush, unvirtuous and writhing in deceit and steeped in the drama of belonging to too many lies. And yes, I had prayed that he'd finally come back to me, and that when he'd knock, he'd appear with one less life, but then he did appear, a xenophile on a tour of homes. And that would be our last encounter. All I could do was heave at the sight of him, head oscillating dizzily between two different men, two different lives, so Piscean in his world of Elysian highs, but this time my systems nose down, anatomy buckling out into autopilot, bringing me down to my knees to purge. And it was like this for days. I couldn't stomach a morsel, my receptors stunted with the shock of an imminent shift. I wept and cocooned myself into a sweat until at once it stopped, and I woke to find myself at the kitchen table, perfectly unbothered, fingering cubes of fresh wet aloe into my mouth, as if life itself were some benign victory I'd won. Okay, so I'm just gonna read a couple pages of the memoir, nothing too crazy. It is called Dyscalculia. And I don't know, it's about a lot of things, mainly about heartbreak, but also about mental health, about being able to save yourself, being able to heal from something that breaks you open. And just for context, dyscalculia is a learning disorder that prevents an individual from being able to do basic arithmetic. Pythagoreans believed that numbers were an infinite, invisible, but radically real force in an ultimate but uncreated world of exponentially dynamic beings. They believed that numbers, and to what rhythms we assign them, give birth to the ineffable, to the faithful. This is how we learn to hear beauty, how we come to know the nature of deficits, how we know what it means to be full, what it means to offer in abundance, and how to quantify the sin of greed. This faith is what introduces the doctrines of Plato, and through Plato, Aristotle's incarnations, and through that translation, Western consciousness is born, and through Western consciousness come these varying systems of order, these strange phenomena of persuasive appeal, and then the self gained a title, lending Western civilization a way to feel, a way to comprehend the sequential mathematics of how each individual comes to know for certain their place and purpose in the world. Of all artistic mediums, mine of choice is one of mathematical impulse, lyrics buoyed by the universal truth of the one and the two. When I say I wanted to die, I do not mean it hyperbolically, metaphorically, or symbolically. I'm not trying to metaphorize an ache or insult the natural function of the mind. Memory makes me flawed in remembering, but this story I can tell without mirage, without the phantasmagoria of misery. What two lovers do in the room of the third world is the math of it all. I loved him, and it gave me a fever. A fractal is a never-ending pattern, infinitely complex. It's a simple equation processed over and over again, reproducing itself in perpetuity, hiding around and inside of us like Russian dolls, like a forest bordered by and stuffed full with trees, like a river that splits and meets itself in another river, like a stamp, like your DNA, like your brain, like your lungs, like their function. It's hurricane season. We're standing in the warm, wet Brooklyn breeze and sharing a lucky cigarette just weeks before our final dance begins, the starry lid of the sky winking down above us. Tinder is so weird, he tells me. I keep starting conversations with people I can't finish. Thank God we actually don't have to date, I tell him. He chuckles, taking a deep inhale on his drag of the cigarette. I ask him, have you met anyone? I reassure him, it's okay if you have. No, of course not, he says. You know I can't see anyone but you. I was born smack dab in the middle of the coldest month of the year, born bold and resistant to the unpredictable, born in urgent sun burning a blister into the shoulder of the earth. Capricorn sun, Gemini rising, Taurus moon, Sagittarius Venus, INFP, year of the monkey. Black or White by Michael Jackson was #1 on the Billboard charts the day I was born, social consciousness accepting its bifurcation, the zeitgeist setting the terms of my induction. In August of that year, Mall of America opened its doors to a new era of capitalism, and in October, Cartoon Network debuted to a generation of perpetual erotic psychosis. Loss, abundance, greed. Children see the world clearly when they first come into it. It's circumstance that sullies the walls of our terrarium, less and less light getting in each day. There were times where I loved math. I swear I did. It was second grade when I realized I was different and it would be a tragedy. When I was distracted, I would float high above the room, noticing everything. The way the clock ticked, how the dust on the board settled, the way the corners of the carpet frayed, how the room itself smelled, the wind from the outside wafting the spring in. I thought to myself that the room smelled like sex, and I didn't realize what I was thinking until I'd said it out loud. My 20-something-year-old teacher, mortified, just stares at me for a moment because what the fuck? Because how horrid to hear an 8-year-old say something so ominous, so unusual. When I said it, the room gasped, children's voices a flurry, and suddenly I was back down on that alphabet rug, no longer floating, red with the humiliation of what I had said out loud. But I knew what I knew. Like a locket, that smell was its own memory. I smelled the scent of that familiar vigor and I left my body. That was the truth. In a few minutes, I'm whisked out of the classroom and into the front office, where I sit in the big leather chair next to the check-in desk, as if I were my own parent. I can't recall what happened next. And it's such a fucking old pain that, there's nothing poetic about it, Fiona sings. And shit if that's not true. The need to storytell is compulsive and agnostic. Unfortunately, everything I need to know about myself becomes documented. Sequence in process was the first sentence to go. With each retell, each new therapist, bit by bit, I could feel the glitching start, my executive functions beginning to complicate. Memory was burning a hole through my capacities, taking up so much space and getting heavier and heavier, my brain's ability to process, taking away from its ability to compute. The washcloth is dry. Did you even bathe? No, we've gone over this. Calculate what's in the parentheses first and then the exponents. Second, first, order, what is. After a few weeks of evaluation, the psychiatrist the lawyers recommended pharmaceutical treatment to help preserve my executive functioning against the poisonous debilitation of the PTSD. We tried Ritalin first. I'm 8 and already on drugs. It's an irony we couldn't anticipate. My mother humming through the cool grays of the morning as she works the pills down my throat, holding back her own sick. Day 1 was a colorful day. Everything moved much faster and my body felt much warmer the sun somehow following my lead. Day 2 was up and down. It was as if my hormones were on axis, dipping in and out of my cerebral at various levels, much too much and much too little all at once. Day 3 was an absolute blur. I slept through every class and I didn't touch my lunch. Day 4 was like day 3, day 12 was like day 8, day 20 was like day 10, and then all the days become the sisters of the other. And I loved Ritalin, everything pink and putrid and rich, hundreds of miles outside my body, thousands of miles outside my bed. After 2 weeks, like day 3, my mother demanded that they find another treatment. You said it would improve her focus, but it's making it worse. She's out of it all the time. They tell her there are no better treatments. Okay, wake up. Wake up. Hi. I know poetry will put you to sleep, but you had to try. You had to try to suffer it. Okay. I'm going to read a couple of new poems, and then we will move on. Okay. For every lover who's ever called me crazy too. What have I even done to make them so envious of possibility, of a body designed by a fact? I did not wish this device into being, would not wish this particular slight on anyone but myself, yet the world, it punishes me for thinking myself into it, for having the skill to be among myself and ahead of myself at the same time. Self-portrait as aporia, or ode to bipolar. Well into days as days, life and its divisible force asked you for sacrifice. And blind as you were to the textures of magic, you understood the assignment, laid yourself at the foot of the wolf, his teeth crimson with your pious offering, wanting to seed whatever honey he could make from heaven's waste. You touched the puff of your belly and knew well the sweetness that kept you tented with shame. And in Mexico City, mirrors creased with the dirt of the dead, you try and recognize your own eyes. Dark as they are with lethargy, you can see the other you preparing the table for your enemies. In the godless universe of remembrance, she is working the earth to avenge you, squeezing from it the muddy waters you shed alone. Have you no faith in her technologies, no clarity in what she has made out of you? A witch's witch. Have you once been in need and not found the well somewhere inside of you, begging to be your night watch, your symptom? Have you not spurned relief from the simple properties of root and agronomy, and entered the world to the smell of frankincense and myrrh, your grandmother draping your soft human wrist in her gold? What lies ahead came before. Leave your mind if you must. What frees you is not sanity. You paid the bill. You sang on key. Croon your own song without language. We meet ourselves in the gaps of ourselves. We do not die. Okay. All right, a love poem. Don't have any of those, but I'm working on it. Then a longing. My heart is the sun of my body and it wants you. Do you know how much that aches? Like a salt bath for the blistered, like a cold that withers the bone. It betrays me, yet I kneel to it. Wouldn't you call that a kind of theft? A kind of breaking in? In any unspoken language, shame is a palindrome doubling me. Through the holes, a blue moon whistles its shine, me and all your untouched desires gathering. At night, every bell is your voice ringing my name. I am already willingly of you, ungainly with consent. May I touch the clouds of your chest with my fingers? Am I fated to be the lover who begs? Do you believe in borders? What I am feeling is the death of a million wayward bodies falling into each other like lattice work on a French pie. I draw a river and your God lines it out into a field. I say this earnestly and with a smile, so I'm not sure what you're asking me. Is it a question of shoulds or of ours? The nation state is a body. It is the Russian doll of bodies, a body housing a body of framed bodies, all of whom mill about in their categorical nothingness, with some parasite sucking from their breasts. All over the globe, one breast drains into the mouth of a whole class, a safety valve for the gutless. You have to understand my parameters here are limited, the space between my two selves, shrinking and pulverized all the same. The wine delivery comes. My courier steps into the foyer. I say hello. I say thank you. I sign her receipt. I offer her a Clorox wipe. I stand away at 6 feet. I don't know. I know nobody dies at my border. For every lover who has ever called me Crazy Five. I was talking to a boy once. He said crazy girls are his Achilles. I broke it. There was a boy once who said crazy girls love me, and I did. I rinsed myself in his waters, his stomach welted with knots, ulcers they called it, but unfortunately it was paradise. And how badly did he want me, wanted to measure me and my particular brand of blasphemies, which of course left him stranded in the waste of his own defeat. He would be there for a long, long while, and after I left him behind, no sooner than after, I recognized the trick, the haptics of madness made musical. The true cruel danger is not that she may levitate. It is not that she might walk the white crossroads of night and return with rabbits. It is that perhaps she does this within reason, and that she might be out of her mind and out of line with power, the very possibility of power. It is that she might be of a language made undead by her burden. It is that she may be a crime uncommitted. It is that she might know something about you, something algorithmic about you, that she might tell on you with her no-speak babble, that everyone will look at you and see the wefts peeking, that she may have sewn them on you, purposefully thrown, that perhaps she bellied the bilge only for the chance to swallow you, that perhaps you will return home, made new, made impossible under the curious lift of her tongue, and that is enough to trigger a haunt. Everyone loves a crazy girl. Yes, and you too. Okay, I'll do 2 more. This is about climate change. Just gonna say that right out. In the future, the rats and the jellyfish will survive. The roaches and the capybaras will survive. The mosquitoes, the fruit flies, the puggles and their soft beaks of post-apocalyptic adolescence will certainly survive. It's us. Malignant tumors of ominous origin, contagions of hominid conceit that won't. And anyway, of what use would it be if we did? Another dreadful century gone, to vainglorious apathy and glamorous afflictions gone, to the silver nostalgias of war. In some 1,000 years, the stars will be too far to see, the negative space of the sky, a new bruise on our progeny. And in some 1,000 years, a child of my blood will gaze up at the bowl of the night and long for a memory. Humans live to find meaning, to make fine record of some urgent collective why. Imagine a dusk not littered with stars. Can you? And anyway, of what use would meaning be then? Okay, last one. Born living, will die. For my favorite auntie, Jeanette. Sometimes I think I'm never going to write a poem again, and then there's a full moon. I miss being in love, but I miss myself most when I'm gone. In the salty, wet air of my ancestry, my auntie peels a mango with her teeth, and I'm no longer writing political poems because there are mangoes, and in my favorite memory, She is still alive. I'm digging for meaning but haunted by purpose, and it's an insufficient approach. What's the margin of loss on words not spent today? I'm getting older. I'm buying smaller images to travel light. I wake up, I light up, I tidy, and it's all over now. Yeah. Okay. If there are any questions, no pressure. We'll have a quick conversation.
There's no extra mic.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that okay if everyone just shouts your question out? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, y'all.
Yeah.
So what is your advice, since you've been recently published again, for any poets or anyone in your field that wants to get published? What is your advice in the current day?
Well, it depends on who it is. If you are young, I'd say wait. You don't have to wait too long. I had a professor once who was like, "You're so young, why are you rushing?" And I was like, time is not waiting on me. Like, gotta do what I gotta do. But I do think it's worth it to just spend some time like really, really honing your craft, so you can make something that you're proud of, even if eventually one day you're like, I don't even love this thing. That's how I feel about my debut. But like, at least I can be confident that like I did the best that I could at that time. I think for like folks who have been in the game a little bit longer, I think perseverance. I mean, I think that's true for all of us, right? Like, it is not easy to get published, but you get one, and then you get the second, and then you get the third, and you just build your CV, and then you submit to prizes, and then you do well, you get an agent, right? There's so many different ways that it can happen, but ultimately just like take your time, stay focused, and persevere.
We definitely have one question.
That has to wait.
Okay.
Don't be shy.
Does it have to be a writing question?
No.
Does not have
Does
to
it?
be.
No, you can ask me anything. Yeah.
Will you talk about the differences in constructing a poetry book and then writing a memoir?
Yeah. A poetry book can be a collection. It can also, obviously be a book, a themed book that's like more linear and narrative. And a memoir ultimately like does require narrative, right? I mean, like to an extent. You can kind of like play with narrative, like kind of like defamiliarize it, but ultimately there does need to be like a story, like A through Z to an extent, just something that the narrator can like, or that the reader can process with the narrator. And also the memoir, like, in some ways needs to be like legible, right? Like you need to be able to know what's going on, at least when you're looking at it as like a full thing. Obviously I read an excerpt and that's like really hard to do from anything full, but my hope is that if you read the full book, you would get to the end and be like, I think I get it. I understand what this story is about. Whereas with a poem, you can leave a little bit more space for interpretation. Of course, you just assume that the reader will either know what you're doing or also make some assumptions and help you figure it out. Yeah, I think that's like the main difference. Yeah.
When did you start to write?
When did I start to write? I would say I like wrote my first poem when I was like 12 or something stupid like that. I was saying early that this is like fun, like pay to play journals where like if you really want to get published, you can like pay them $20 and they'll like put you in a book with a bunch of other people who paid $20. And
Not a scam.
not a scam at all, obviously, of course. And my mom, I was like, I really like want to publish a poem. My mother was like, what? So that's like the most random thing ever, but okay. And she like helped me find it and sent it. And then I kind of just like went from there. Like I dipped in and out of different kinds of writing. Of course I had like a journal and all that stuff. And then I would say that I like really started to take it seriously when I was like 16 or 17. And I had the privilege to be able to learn with some really great and special people early on, which is not a privilege that I take for granted. So, yeah.
Are there any poets or just writers in general that you like to take inspiration from?
Many. So I'm gonna try to go through as many as I can. My mentors or people that I learned with are like Anne Lauterbach, you probably haven't heard of. She's like a brilliant, what's the word that I'm looking for, abstractionist. And then Ansel Berrigan, who is not so much abstract, but like just kind of weird. It's just like a weird person on the page. He wouldn't be offended that I said that. There's Fred Moten, who is a poet. He's also a theorist and philosopher, and I take a lot of my inspiration from him. There's a person named Douglas Kearney, who like really plays around with like form and like gets messy on the page, and I like stuff like that. Of course, naturally, I'm influenced by Sylvia Plath, which like feels funny to say because it's so like, I don't know, I don't want to say cliche, but yeah. There is Gwendolyn Brooks, of course, Lucille Clifton. Yeah, and then there are like my peers, my contemporaries whom I love, like Taylor Johnson, Safia Hilo. Yeah, there's like a long list. I'm trying to like pull them all, but I think that's like the best I can do right now.
Still have time for, oh, you got one? No. I think we have time for one more. Okay, yeah.
What is it about Anne Lauterbach that you connect?
Abstraction mostly, and the way she kind of like deals with images. She tends to kind of like bury into an image, and they're usually like quite strange images. She buries into it and then kind of builds the entire poem like into it, right? So it's like there are metaphors, like plenty of metaphors, tons of metaphors, but what's at the center of it is like this like key visual element, like, you know, where she'll say something, everything will be like abstract and weird, and then she'll be like, you know, at the center of the universe, you know, everything folds or something like that. And it's like the one image that grounds you in the whole thing, and everything else kind of like, yeah, just kind of like builds around it. And I really like that because, and I guess also just that I studied with her, I wound up just like taking on some of that. But I like poems that do that, that like aren't fully transparent and like kind of make you work for what's there. Not that I think that that is like what makes a poem better than another, but just I tend to like poems like that. And she can be like quite rigorous with how she approaches the line, and I think that's really profound to just like deal with the line so intently. Yeah. Yeah. And then I saw one more.
I just want to know how you went about writing a poem.
How I go about writing a poem? Good question, not always easy to answer. Ultimately, I start with an image, right? Just like something that just like bounces out at me. And then at the same time that the image comes, like the metaphor comes, right? Like some big macro extended metaphor that then my brain is like, okay, we gotta tease this thing out. We gotta like tease this metaphor out. And then, yeah, I kind of just like take the image, take the metaphor, and then try to expand it or condense it as much as I can. The best way I can explain it is like I have a poem about walking a friend home and wanting a friend to call me when they got home. And the image that came to me is a blue moon, and so I said like a blue moon whistling, and like that that metaphor by itself kind of like built the rest of the poem, where I was essentially saying like, in the dark, when there's danger, there's also like safety in the people that love you, right? So yeah, that's kind of it. Like image, condense it, expand it, try to locate the metaphor, and like take it off from there. Yeah. Book.
Our actual last question.
All right, so this one is a very college tradition, one that we try to ask all of the visiting writers.
I heard that this is coming.
Since 2017.
Wonderful, then we can shortcut. What are your thoughts and opinions on Beyonce?
This is an unfair question.
There's no wrong answer.
If you asked me this question 2 years ago or 4 years ago when Lemonade came out, it would be a different answer. I'm trying not to be overly cerebral with this answer, but I feel like Beyonce is struggling to like relocate her voice right now, and I really love the way she approaches her artistry, but it feels a little muddled, and I feel like I don't know where she's trying to go. And it feels like the whole like genre moving thing she's doing is like in response to criticism versus like an actual like internal thing. Like the whole country album, she was just like mad that the CDA like didn't want her to get the album or didn't want her to get the award. So I feel disconnected from that. But like I love her. I'm always excited for her music. And yeah, it's the best I can do. Yes.